I'm Rachel McKinney, and I'm the project manager for the Value of Industry Pharmacist case competition at South College. Today, we'll talk about our new medication, Basicil, and its indication for triple-negative breast cancer. The need to create a medication targeting triple-negative breast cancer comes from the disease's background. Triple-negative breast cancer lacks the hormone receptors that other breast cancers have. Most chemotherapy agents for breast cancers are aimed at those hormone receptors, which means that many won't affect triple-negative. One direction we found for development was to target the overexpression of p-cadherin that is found in half of triple-negative breast cancers. The epidemiology for triple-negative breast cancer shows that African American women over 40 are more likely to get triple-negative breast cancer, along with a higher risk in those who are premenopausal or with a young age of first pregnancy. There are 200,000 new cases each year. Next, we'll discuss the clinical development of our drug. So here's an overview of our clinical profile before we discuss the development. Some important things to note are the dosing schedule and the metabolism. Unlike other medications, Basicil is hepatically eliminated rather than renally. And the dosing schedule allows for a titration and once daily dosing in 28-day cycles. Some other things to note are the side effects. Nausea is much less likely to occur with Basicil, although the toxicities were consistent with the other chemotherapy treatments. As mentioned previously, Basicil is hepatically metabolized and therefore is contraindicated in hepatic impairment. Our goal for clinical development is to gain regulatory approval to manufacture and market loraparib with an indication for triple-negative breast cancer treatment. Loraparib applies to multiple categories, allowing us to skip phase 1 trials. We have the potential to address unmet needs, treat a serious life-threatening condition, show a clinically significant improvement in outcomes, which all allow an advantage over other therapies. Our phase 2 trial was designed to show safety and efficacy. The goal was to show non-inferiority of Basicil in safety as compared to the standard of care plus placebo. The SOL trial was a 20-week-long randomized, double-blind, multi-center trial including 200 patients that met our inclusion and exclusion criteria. Patients that received the treatment received 500 milligrams of loraparib once daily in 28-day cycles. Our primary safety endpoint was a composite involving common side effects of chemotherapy agents. These included cell abnormalities like myelosuppression, leukopenia, and neutropenia, as well as liver toxicity and mucositis. We also looked at efficacy using RECIST guidelines to measure tumor response. Our results showed no difference in safety outcomes between Basicil and placebo, indicating our medication has a comparable safety profile to competitors. For efficacy, there was a statistically significant difference in RECIST outcomes for Basicil over placebo. Basicil showed better complete and partial response and less stable disease and disease progression than placebo. Our phase 3 trial looked at progression-free survival in patients with triple-negative breast cancer compared to placebo and standard of care in the same population. The CAP trial was a 24-month randomized, double-blind, multi-center trial with 800 patients. We used the same design parameters as phase 2 with the same inclusion and exclusion criteria, again receiving 500 milligrams once daily. Our primary endpoint was progression-free survival measured by CT or MRI as recommended by RECIST. Overall, those diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer and receiving loraparib had significantly longer progression-free survival than those who received placebo. We ran an additional dosing study to ensure the most appropriate doses and found that doses greater than 1,000 milligrams increased the risk of side effects. So doses between 125 to 500 milligrams showed the greatest tolerability. In order to combat adverse effects, blood tests taken every 3 months to monitor cell abnormalities allowed us to determine when to decrease the dose and when to discontinue. Patients experiencing leukopenia with less than 3,500 cells per milliliter should discontinue this medication. The same is also applied to thrombocytopenia. If levels fall below 150,000, the medication should be discontinued. We created an investigator's brochure following the 6 main sections required. We discussed concepts including the mechanism of action, preclinical studies in animals, our recent trials in humans involving the SOL and CAP trial, which discussed safety, efficacy, and side effects. There also may be some specific adverse effects that were not seen in animal testing but seen in human trials that we weren't expecting. These may be combated with a lower initial dosing, and some outcomes may include progression of triple-negative breast cancer that causes exacerbation leading to discontinuation of the trial, as well as patients stopping the trial early due to adverse effects. Some other potential indications that we plan to pursue are basal cell carcinomas, HER2-negative breast cancers, otherwise known as ER/PR positive, and HER2 positive, as well as prostate and cervical cancers. We will work alongside the regulatory affairs team to ensure that we are properly documenting every step of each clinical phase. The medical affairs team will be the liaison between the stakeholders and us, letting us know exactly what the people want. The medical affairs team will also be responsible for preparing the scene for our new drug. They'll discuss what triple-negative breast cancer is and why we need a treatment for it. The marketing team will use our research to market our drug to the public. Pharmacists have an expert understanding of how medication work in the body based on the pharmacokinetics, which is absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination, as well as the pharmacodynamic properties. For example, a pharmacist is trained on the bioavailability of a drug to understand the characterization of drug exposure through therapeutic window. This helps predict dosing requirements during the development process and assist with adjusting doses to avoid toxicity. Furthermore, understanding the elimination of the drug and its half-life help regarding formulation designs. For example, if a drug needs to be enteric-coated, hard-pressed or soft-pressed tablet, IV, IM, and so on. Pharmacists spend their entire schooling learning about drugs and their impact on the body. By learning and engaging in various disease states and their treatment options, we're able to see how drugs affect the body and how the body affects the drugs. By combining this knowledge into a central focused disease state, such as triple-negative breast cancer, we are able to piece together our current knowledge to uncover a new option for the body. In addition, we are required to stay up to date with all upcoming guidelines and drug options. With that ever-expanding knowledge, we serve as a vital information source for practitioners to utilize.
Hi, I'm Adam, one of the lead pharmacists on the regulatory affairs team for BasicHO. We're going to go through our process on how we got BasicHO through the FDA and onto the open market. One of the lead roles for pharmacists is they are the clinical experts and the drug experts. They know everything about our drug, and as our clinical team has proven to you, we know BasicHO. Regulatory team, our job is to get BasicHO through the FDA process and onto the open market for patients. One of the first steps is filing an IND, and the goal here is to say, hey, we have a new white powder to use for patients. And we don't know what it's going to do yet, but that's the whole process of the clinical development and getting it done. There's a lot of things that need to be done for the FDA, including lots of paperwork that needs to be filed and properly done and edited and reviewed, including things like descriptions of the product, descriptions of the clinical indications and approach, how we're going to set up all of our clinical trials, running the clinical trials, physicians, doctors, suppliers, everything in the supply line needs to be approved by the FDA. The IND filing requires these aspects in the presentation. They normally used to be paper, but now in 2020 we can do this all electronically, saving lots of time and effort. Healthy Authority Board, or the FDA interactions, require a lot. A lot of this is going to be soliciting information and advice from them, as well as sponsored meetings. There are meetings pre-IND, during IND, during every clinical phase, pre and post meetings with the FDA that allow us to properly communicate how our drug is doing in both the efficacy and the safety of our product, and how we expect to expand BasicHO going into the future. Each of these meetings usually lasts about 1 hour. They happen about 30 to 60 days after we've applied for application to the FDA. To better utilize these aspects, we're going to go for some accelerated programs. Seeing as BasicHO is focused on triple-negative breast cancer, we're going to omit the phase 1 because, as the clinical team has already stated, the importance of testing it on actual cancer patients is most ethical, as well as safety concerns for testing it on individuals who do not have cancer. Accelerated programs can also include the fast track, breakthrough therapy, accelerated approval process, and the priority review. All of these things are required to be met for BasicHO to get made through the FDA quickly and as safely as possible. First, there needed to be a serious condition, which breast cancer is serious and is life-threatening. There usually needs to be an unmet need, considering the triple-negative breast cancer has not been met in the current market. BasicHO falls on that requirement. That there's an improvement on the therapy, considering their current therapy is not adequate for patients, and the meaningful advantage and endpoints of extending patients' life is really important in cancer treatment. All of this needs to be filed in the pre-IND filings with the FDA. So this needs to be done during the development stage early on. And so regulatory affairs has to have constant communication with the clinical development team to properly get this done. In the 80s and 90s, a process called an orphan drug was developed by the FDA, in which a drug that affects less than 200,000 patients in the United States, companies are eligible for reimbursement, recompensation, tax rebates, and other incentives to help create medications to help these specific populations. Our company has also filed applications for all of these in their process of making Basicil available to the public. Once the IND and clinical has been filed and all of the clinical trials have been done, you file for an NDA. This is being United States focused, as elsewhere in the world, the NDA filings are going to be a little bit different. Our main target here, just like the FDA's, is efficacy and safety. If those two things are not met, then no drug is going to make it to the market, and Basicil is both effective in triple-negative breast cancer and safe for those patients. Our clinical trials show that in our phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all prove the advantages of Basicil over the current treatments on market and the placebos. Our submission is going to follow all the regulations that the FDA is going to require, and all those preclinical meetings and other submission requirements with the FDA have been met. And the last thing, the regulatory affairs team is also responsible for continuous evaluation. Every year, there is going to be an annual report on our Basicil drug that it's going to be submitted to the FDA. This is going to look at continuous data gathering information as Basicil has hit the open market and administered to as many patients as it can possibly help.
Hi, my name is Varun Bond, and I'm the lead pharmacist for our medical affairs team, and today we'll be talking about our drug Basicil.
There are numerous functions of the medical affairs team. However, the three main teams that make up the medical affairs team and their functions are going to be what we'll discuss today. The medical communications and publications experts are responsible in developing all drug-related publications, which include manuscripts, posters, and other materials required for commercialization of the products. They coordinate timing of the data lock and release of these data at scientific meetings. They define plans of timing of abstract submissions and key manuscripts for the drugs that can be published along with the interim or pivotal data, which can take over months or years before the actual publication of the drug. They are also responsible for publication information and material relating to the drug in competitive healthcare market and when medical communities begin to add the drug in their therapeutics programs. Therefore, they make sure the publication is written in a clear, consistent language to describe the results. Each initiative is carefully and meticulously planned and executed to maximize the exposure and spread awareness of the new drug in the market. The medical science liaisons traditionally have two roles: to support a range of educational and research goals. However, their real value lies in building and maintaining relationships internally and externally with the community. They are the face of the company that are responsible for spreading awareness about the drug to academic and other physicians and internally within the company. The MSL team is usually formed 24 months to 12 months before the launch of the drugs. It allows the team to learn everything about the disease state, drug, therapeutic landscape, and critically building relationships with the external stockholders such as doctors, key organizations, players, etc. It is vital for the success of the drug to have their relationship before the launch of the drug. The medical information experts are crucial players in connecting the MSL team and commercial teams. During the launch of the new drug, medical information experts are the ones that receive questions such as efficacy, safety, dosing, administration, etc. from the patients, healthcare providers, and other interested parties. Therefore, it is crucial for them to have well pre-written and concise letters that accurately describe the information the company has about the drug or doesn't have about the drug. This allows the medication information experts to develop commercial material and or sales trainings before the product launch. The team, like other medical affairs teams, is formed 12 to 24 months before the product launch. The internal stakeholders are responsible for educating about the science behind the drug using scientific exchange resource. Training can be accomplished by educating internal stakeholders about the science behind Basic-Hill using scientific exchange resources that could include the mechanism of disease and the mechanism of action presentation. Information about the ongoing trials, timelines, and the results of emerging data as they become available with the aid of slides as an educational resource to summarize key data can be effective in attaining these goals. Further research into the sales and target markets would be important to establish the effect of Basic-Hill and its intended indication as a triple-negative breast cancer agent, where it is best fits an unmet need in the current therapeutic guidelines. It is also important to comply with the FDA regulations that prohibit the promotion of an investigational drug as being effective or safe, and balanced information, including both positive and negative results, should be disclosed as they are observed. The medical affairs team can set up a call center division, which will manage adverse event reporting as well as handle other queries from the healthcare professionals post-launch. The external stakeholders is a team that is formed sometime during 12 to 25 months time frame, and this gives them enough time to master this disease state and therapeutic landscape and learning about all key aspects of the drugs, which help in establishing relationship with the key external stakeholders. The off-labeling of Basic-Hill is the healthcare professionals responding to the regulatory rules on unsolicited requests and other medical professionals which are responsible for receiving the off-label information on Basic-Hill. Some of the key opinion leaders that play a part in this are going to be from different committees that include different research individuals like medical professionals working through the clinical development team to ensure the safety of the drug through the various phases of the clinical trials. The company will need to keep in touch with the medical affairs team throughout the whole process of drug development. The medical affairs team will be the bridge between the clinical development team and the marketing research team to make sure the drug that is being developed has gone through all the stages and that the marketing team is able to come up with an efficient plan to bring the drug to the market. Being a pharmacist in a medical affairs, it's very important and very imperative because the medical affairs is a bridge between developing and commercialization. Who better than a pharmacist that knows about the drugs to speak on drugs and represent them? In addition, the pharmacist has real-world experience, especially if they have been in a retail community pharmacy.
Hello, I'm Roger McKinney, the chief pharmacist on the team responsible for developing the company's outcomes-based repayment model. I'm going to talk about the challenge of pricing, which is a difficulty facing many of our patients. The Institute for Clinical and Economic Review, as well as drug pricing analysts, are looking into pricing for Basic-Hill, as it is expected to be very high and unobtainable for most patients. In order to combat this, our company has performed a SWOT analysis in an effort to increase drug marketability and develop an effective outcomes repayment model focused on cost, reimbursement, and patient outcomes and satisfaction. Our SWOT analysts determined some of the strengths of Basic-Hill were decreased adverse effects, outcomes which are proven in clinical trials, and fast-track approval. We also had weaknesses, including intense monitoring and required genetic testing for Basic-Hill, in addition to the narrow population we are appealing to, due to the indication of triple-negative breast cancer. Threats that we face include cost and trust. Some of our opportunities include a need that hasn't been met yet, and an outcomes repayment model that reimburses both insurance companies and patients. Currently, there is no FDA-indicated or approved medication to treat triple-negative breast cancer. Basic-Hill fits this niche in oncology that no other medication has yet to fill. As mentioned previously, 200,000 cases of triple-negative breast cancer are diagnosed each and every year. Although it is not as prevalent as other cancers, triple-negative breast cancer is one of the most difficult to treat breast cancers due to the lack of hormonal targets. Basic-Hill can be marketed not only for its indication, but also its favorable side effect profile. With less nausea and vomiting than other chemotherapy agents, patients may be able to avoid additional costs from chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting prophylaxis, reducing the overall cost and burden of triple-negative breast cancers. Patients are required to be genetically tested before starting Basic-Hill. Patients that test positive for triple-negative breast cancer and are candidates for Basicil who initiate the therapy will be eligible for partial to complete refund or repayment of the genetic testing. This should cover 50 to 100% of the cost up to $2,000. The cost can range anywhere from $200 to $4,000 depending on one of many variables. The testing ensures that our medication is being used in the correct population group so as to optimize medication therapy and disease progression. Should the patient be compliant and adherent to the medication and treatment therapy and need to stop treatment for adverse effects, cancer progression, financial instability, or death, the patient and/or insurance company may be eligible for a prorated repayment of treatment. For compliance and adherence, we want to ensure that the patient is best utilizing the medication and making the best lifestyle choices that help fight off cancer and reduce progression. For the patient and for the insurance to be eligible for this repayment, the patient must be compliant with our standards of expected care. Our standards of care are as follows. The patient will be required to be tobacco-free at the time of starting the medication. Should the patient require nicotine therapy to aid in cessation, appropriate therapy by the prescribing physician of Basicil is required. The patient is also required to abstain from illicit drug use or alcohol consumption to the point where the alcohol content in the blood is above 0.05. The patient must be compliant while taking Basicil, and if appropriate, must use oral contraceptives during the duration of treatment with Basicil, and have monthly checkups with the physician that has been prescribing. Each patient is required to undergo a psych evaluation at the start of treatment. This is done to help better give the patient the tools they need to cope with the struggle against fighting cancer. The patient is not required to continue this therapy, and should they need to continue this, it would have to be done under the supervision of a psychologist. Drug costs are estimated to be between $15,000 and $18,750 for patients and insurance for a 30-day supply of the medication. Through our outcome repayment model, the insurance companies could be eligible to receive a prorated portion of their investment back if the treatment results in failure or the patient shows adverse effects and has remained compliant while taking Basicil. Our rebate program allows customers to have the same copay as competitors for the first month. Since the rebate option is generated in-house, it can be used to combat any expense-related issues. The idea of a rebate provides the marketing team an agile response to the biggest issue facing our product, which is the price.
Hi, my name is Shadi Zamanipur, and I'm the team leader for the marketing group for Basicil Southern Pharmaceutics Incorporated. And today, I'm going to talk about how we are planning to market Basicil in pharmaceutical industry. So, the role of a pharmacist in marketing of Basicil is divided into two categories, clinical versus non-clinical. So the clinical role is for the pharmacist to analyze and interpret any clinical data that we have which supports our core message for marketing this drug. The pharmacist has to provide clinical perspective and clinical reference. The pharmacist has to also review any promotional material that is given for this drug. Pharmacist has to support sales force training and organize and manage any advisory board or speaker program that is designed to market the product. And pharmacist, of course, is the person who builds relationships and maintains those relationships. The non-clinical role of the pharmacist includes things such as assisting trimester planning, understanding the sales force, compensations, tracking the sales, tracking any promotional activities that are done for the product, and participating in research and evaluating the research, understanding the budgeting and any annual planning process. Basicil currently has 3 competitors in the market. The competitors include Zejula, Lynparza, and Xeloda. The main audience that we are trying to target as we are trying to market Basicil are patients, and of course we are trying to get the attention of oncologists, pharmacists, and insurance companies as well. Addressing patient needs. So we are glad to announce that Basicil is not an injection drug, which makes it so much easier for patients to be adherent to this drug because they can take it orally. It has been proven that Basal has shown more effective results through clinical testing. We have fewer effects than our competitors. We have fewer drug-drug interactions. Basal has less renal toxicity because it is hepatically cleared, so patients don't have to deal with that as a side effect anymore. And they only have to take this drug once a day, which again makes it so much easier for our patients to be adherent and compliant with this drug. Our drug is FDA approved, and it's been it requires genetic testing. In certain cases, we even pay for that genetic testing to make it easier for patients to be able to afford our drug. And then we also have a program called Outcome Repayment Model, which is available for patients who have been compliant 100% with our standards of expectation for our patient care. We have a manufacturer rebate card, which is also available to make it easier for people who don't have the financial capability to have access to our drug. It is clinically proven to have better outcomes, and it has less frequent dosing. It has much less DDIs than any of our competitors that are currently in market. We are offering a manufacturing rebate card, as I talked about previously, which can be available on our website for patients to easily access and read about. And it is offered to patients who could not financially afford the drug or treatment. We also we require for our patients to be genetically tested prior to using Basal. And the triple-negative breast cancer candidates of Basal could be eligible for partial or complete refund of genetic testing. The test would be used to ensure that our medication is being used for the correct population group, which also makes it a lot easier for our oncologists and pharmacists to be able to choose and designate which patient gets to use this drug. Our outcome repayment model is available if the patient has to stop therapy or experiences a non-successful treatment. As long as they have been 100% compliant with our standards of expectation for patient care, we would allow an outcome repayment model, which means that we will pay a portion of it back to their insurance company, which is another great thing that makes it more affordable for them to use Basal. Our core message is that compared to placebo, we have 70% reduced risk of tumor growth, spread, or worsening. We have been able to decrease cancer progression, and we've had progression-free survival shown in our studies. We've had about 61% of patients show no cancer recurrence rate. And the once-a-day dosing has made it a lot easier for our patients to stay adherent and compliant towards taking the drug for the duration recommended by their physician. Basal is the only drug of its type that has genetic testing requirement, which this requirement helps narrow down patient population to better assist physicians to choose this drug for those patients who could benefit from it the most. The financial assistance provided for patients who qualify would also make this drug more affordable for more people, for more population group. And Basal is the only drug of its type that is offering an outcome repayment method, which offers money-back guarantee to patients as long as they've been 100% compliant and adherent to our standards, but had to stop therapy or receive the non-successful treatment. Our standards causes the patients and encourages them to stay adherent and compliant with the guidelines, such as avoiding tobacco use, taking oral contraceptives, or do monthly checkups with their doctors. This system could also possibly motivate insurance companies and improve their willingness to cover the costs of medication, knowing that they can get a portion of what they're investing in that patient back, even if the therapy doesn't work for the patient, as long as the patient was compliant with it. It would also help our physicians in motivating their patients to be more responsible toward doing their part in the treatment process so they can get the best outcome. So we have provided some printed materials to advertise and market Basicil. Those materials include brochures to be given out on oncologist offices or hospital pharmacies. We have rebate programs offered through manufacturer assistance, and we have handouts to be included with the brochures. Our promotional advertising includes a landscape-based medical education that depends mainly on geography. Partnering with local drug manufacturers that can be an option for us, especially in other countries that already have an infrastructure built for cancer patients. We have a specialized medical affairs team that includes medical science liaisons to carry our peer-to-peer discussions with physicians and allow for more information, for more informed decisions. Our clinical studies shows that Basicil provided similar levels of efficacy as the leading competitors with a shorter dosing schedule. So not only we give them the same effect, we give the same effect with less doses requirement. So most cancer maintenance treatments are expensive and limited stock. Basicil, however, is much more affordable, and we have a rebate offered that is easily accessible for any patient to gain access to. We are the only FDA-approved cancer maintenance treatment for advanced ovarian cancer and BRCA mutation.
For future direction, we hope to continue our research on the possibilities of Basicil and expand the indications. We also want to use Basicil as a platform to redefine triple-negative breast cancer as a cancer that's easily beatable with the right health qualifications.